Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Today Show. I'm your host, Dr. Laurie Davis, and with me for season two, Dr. Ramin Modiri here on Tuesday for Money Matters. Good morning.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be back. It's been a
I
while.
know it's been a while. Hey?
Yes.
Well, anyway, I know you're always on fire yourself, but now you're really on fire down there. Like, tell us, can you give us an update? You're having three big fires in California right now, and you're near one of them.
Oh, yes. It's been a kind of exciting day. It's interesting how life is fragile, how things can go from one thing to another, and the priorities completely change in a matter of minutes. It's interesting. I was doing an X-ray in my knee, as I love playing soccer, and my knees have been bad, but I'm like doing this X-ray and sitting there, and I'm texting one of our mutual friends because they have fires in San Bernardino, and I'm very concerned about that. And she said she was okay, and here I'm like, oh, thank God. And my X-ray is done, and technicians looking at it and said, well, I got to send to radiologist. I got to go over this. You're a mess. So he's showing all the broken pieces of my knee, and you know, it didn't really matter to me because soccer has always been
Right.
the most amazing thing. It's sports as a whole. It's just a wonderful. It's much cheaper than therapies, and I didn't really care in that sense. But he said, "Well, you got to do a lot of things," and so now all of a sudden you're thinking about your knee. I come out of the X-ray appointment. I'm driving home. I see this big smoke. I said, oh, it must be the mountains, and I'm getting closer and closer. So I'm now like 1 minute to my house, and all you see is just the smoke. And I don't know for our audience if they follow Lord of the Rings, the Sauron, the eye.
Yeah, right.
That's all you see. There's like this big smoke with red right in the middle with the fire. It's like the movies. And I said, oh my God, it's like too close. So I go home, and it is the next town. So it felt close. We had a notification. There's a voluntary evacuation, and but we said, we just did all the preliminary things, got ready, brought the furniture from the backyard, and just weathered around the house, got the priorities. So, and that's the thing is, all of a sudden, the knee and X-ray, all of that went aside. The idea was now, so what do I gather? What do I do? The things that if that last second we have to leave, and my son wasn't home yet with his friend, they're like watching the fire. It's like a fireworks. So they were at home. So I'm like doing things. And so that's how fragile our lives are, and how at that moment, and I know you went through this a year ago, when you gather things, you see, well, if I have like 10 minutes, what do I need? What are the most important things?
Uh-huh.
And it brings your life to reality in a way that you you sit down and think, well, these are the priorities. The things that I've been worried, 90% of them, they really don't matter. So
Exactly. Yes, we learned that. We had 10 minutes to get out last year, and so I grabbed the dog and a bag of dog food, and I have a little fireproof box that I keep my passport in and important papers like that, and threw some food in a bag, and now I have a bag of dry goods packed already in the closet, and a bag of paper plates, like things like that to eat with. So I guess food and shelter, and keep the vehicles full of gas, because that particular evening we were going to go the day before and fill up the truck with gas, and we got busy cleaning out the garage, and the day went by. But the next night, when we got thrown out at midnight, we didn't have a full tank of gas, and so we were sitting in traffic trying to get out of town, and it took us an hour and a half to get out of this little town. And the gas stations did not have any gas left.
Yeah.
So full tank of gas now all the time, just in case.
No, no.
And I never worried about it too much because we're in town. So, we're 2 minutes to the hospital and 2 minutes to the grocery store, and never really concerned myself. It was different when we lived in the country. We
Right.
always made sure we had lots of gas then too. But yeah, so yeah, lots of gas and water, bottled water. Keep a case of that handy. Take
Yeah.
with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, you don't think about that. I'd never had that experience before, so I was totally unprepared.
Right. Right. No, no, it is, it's like a kind of sometimes it's like a wake up call, slap in the
Oh
face.
yeah.
Then
Hmm.
Ramin, wake up. I mean, we are fortunate that, this is really local. So we have,
Hmm.
I mean, it's like in backyard when you look at it's just, you know, blue sky on one side completely, and one side is pitch dark. You can smell the smoke, and
Wow.
we are very close. So, but the schools are open. It
Yeah.
has expanded, but the wind really helped us last night. So
Oh, good.
it is grown, but it's toward the mountains now. So, but there's
Yes.
still evacuation going on in some of the
Hmm. Hmm.
houses. But so far, so good. And
Hmm.
it is what it is. So,
I know, and and you've had such extremely hot weather, and
yeah.
that hasn't helped either.
No.
Right. Well, we can feel fall in the air, and the leaves are starting to turn already.
Right.
So, up in the park across the street, the leaves are becoming yellow and falling off, and so we know that fall's here for sure. Around the corner will be snowflakes. So,
Yeah. Hopefully, we are cooling down here too. So
well,
that
that's
would
a
be
good
nice.
thing. That's
Yeah.
a good thing. So today, what have you got for us today? What are we going to talk about?
Well, talking about lessons of life, I'm a big advocate of, as much as I love technology and the things, the tools that we use, I think the wisdom and what we have given from our elders and experiences and the things that we can learn from our experiences, others' experiences, the lessons, it plays a big role when it comes to investing. So I'm gonna uh, talk about some of the words of wisdom from Charles Munger, who late Charles Munger, I have to say, he was really, I would say, even better half of Warren Buffett. We all love Warren Buffett, and uh, Charles, he passed away 5 weeks prior to his 100-year birthday. He was born on
Oh,
January 1st,
wow.
1924, and he passed away November 23rd, 2023. So, but he is such a words a master in his science of managing investments, and he really guided Warren in many ways too. But they had the same principles. But before I start, I thought let me start with an interesting quote that I think might be timely from Socrates. And Socrates says that smart people learn from everything and everyone. Average people, they learn from their experiences. Stupid people already have all the answers. So the question is, and I really love this because, we're going back over 2,000 years ago, 2,400 years ago. That's the wisdom. I mean, coming from Socrates, and it's true today as it was, over 2,000 years ago. So it is the human nature, what we have. And so that's what I thought would be good to talk about that. But let me start with this before getting to investment. I don't know if you knew, in the Great Depression in 1930s, when it happened, it was probably the biggest economic disaster in 600 years prior to that. So Great Depression affected so many people
Hmm.
globally, and when you have 25% of the population unemployed, that's disaster because they all have obviously related needs. And but would you believe that actually crime did not increase during Great Depression. And that's the question
Wow.
we have to ask because,
Hmm.
in case of such a hardships, you would think there would be a lot of, you know, robbery, but even criminal activities. So, and we don't have the computers, other things, but this is based on the local police reports that we can see. So the question we have to ask, what happened? Why people in 1960s, when we had like full employment almost, we had as much crime as like 1990s. So what gives? And I, before again dive into the words of wisdom of investing, we have to look into why again different cultures, different communities, they survive, that they actually in the times of hardships they actually do not fall apart. And when I look back in 1930s, I think one of the most important things was the family. There was a close knit of families, and we noticed that in 2008 financial crisis here, we studied some of these developing countries and how they didn't get affected. There was this close knit of social blanket that the families supported each other. So that was important. There was also, it was that honor, there was that, again, believing in the traditions, the work ethics, the respect for elders. There was a lot of these, again, ethical values that kept them together. So it was not right to go and steal or to go and kill someone, unless, again, they always can find excuse. But there were a lot of activities. So I think when it comes to where we live right now, at the times, we have come, my God, hundredfold as far as technological improvements and other things, economic improvement. But I would say, the problems are actually more in some ways than they were then. And I think it's that the tradition and the values of what we had, the families are not closer, the environment is not the same. Yes, the children have all the toys that they need, but they don't have the guidance from their parents, their families. They don't have, as far as the right path of knowing who they are, the self understanding and the self value, those worth. You can be very poor but still have a lot of value in yourself. You have honor in yourself, and I think that's what we're missing. So in asset class, or from net worth point of view, yes, we have grown. I was looking at the over the weekend we did a little lesson of the week, and we look at the wealthiest countries in the world, and United States is like number four, as far as net worth. But from the value point of view, I think we have a lot of difficulties. So with that, I'm gonna let me see how we're doing time wise. If we good, I'm gonna share some of the words of wisdom and some of the things that Charles Munger had done during his lustrous really career. I mean, he was a master of a lot of things. He went to University of Michigan, but he, he came from a very uh, good educated family in a way that education was a priority.
Hmm.
And his grandfather was a judge. Just like, so he wanted to, didn't want to be a doctor. He said, I could not stand blood. So, but he did go to University of Michigan. He did really interesting thing, like a history major, but also went to law school, Harvard, and then met with Warren Buffett. Um, and he's got a lot of words of life wisdom which we can apply in investing. So I started with this major one. I call it the reverse engineering. He calls it invert, always invert. And what that means is he stresses the inversion as a mental model. What he means by that is, and you just mentioned actually briefly, it's like he says, when you think about situation, things what you would avoid, and rather than just what you want to achieve. So he looked at the worst case scenario. So during World War II, he didn't want to go, he was not qualified to be in the combat. So he was actually the person in charge of the weather. He's the one within, within the Navy, with the pilots and everything. He would tell them how the weather is, what they could do. And he said, when I was looking at that, I always looked at, all right, how would these pilots die? What is the worst case scenario if something happened to them? So he started from that point of view, and he looked at it and said, so what is the biggest pitfall? So I said, okay, when I was looking at it, what are the two cases that the pilot will not make it to the destination? Number one, the weather. They could have really, bad weather and it will
Mhm. Mhm.
divert them. Or the second one would be they run out of fuel. And we just talked about that. So those are the two major things. So I said, if we took care of those two, the other things we could take care of. And this, again, is important when we talk about life. We just talk about fires, but it comes in investing as well. So, for instance, I look at countries. So my background was international finance, emerging countries. So when you talk about developing countries, they're still in development stage. And I would look at, okay, this country, what is the worst case could happen to them economically? And even in managing our portfolios, and this is again from investment side of things, when we manage a portfolio, there's two things we look at. We call it, one is called scenario analysis. So what we do stimulation, through different programming, and we look at what is the during this scenario, what will happen to our portfolios. I give you one example. Let's say we have, you know, inflation, we have interest rates going up, the recession could happen. So we look at every one of those and then we say, well, if we put all of this together, what will happen to our portfolios? What happened to our each asset in our portfolio and how would they would react? So we look at the worst case scenario in a totality, and then based on that, we become prepared. We say, well, if these things happen, then we should do this. And you can apply to, again, different countries. The second part that we do is called stress testing. Now, let's say we looked at, a couple of years ago, we looked at the inflation, that everything is going up. So I say, what is the worst case just for inflation? Forget about interest rate. What will happen if inflation went to 20%, 15%? In that situation, what we need to do, what asset classes will do the best, what asset classes will do the worst. So we look at the worst case scenario, and then we take it, okay, what will happen to interest rates? What will happen to unemployment? And by doing so, we become prepared for, again, the cases that we have to take care of. So our portfolio kind of, we just talk about the fire. It's important to be prepared before things happen. When you look at Olympics, somebody's, you got 100-meter dash. It's only like under 10 seconds, but they've worked 4 years to run for 10 seconds. So that
Mhm.
preparation is the most important thing. Also, it's probably boring. So a lot of times when you look at, especially our younger investors, they get so excited that they learn a little bit. That's what I always repeat. Little knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge or ignorance. The little knowledge gives them this false sense of security that now they go gung-ho because they think they're the greatest investors. So the problem is we have, the beginner's luck, whether it's in investing, you could start playing chess. You learn just about chess and you learn about backgammon or any game, poker, and then all of a sudden you're winning. You think, oh my God, if I'm good at this time, how much better I will be if I learned. So, but they don't realize, somebody that has been losing to them has been doing this for many years. And it's all about how would you do if there was 20 games, or how would you do if there was 20 trades. So that's what is important. It's very valuable to do the preparation. And one of the best ways is, we call it again inverting, reverse engineering. Look at the worst case scenario. Don't always think about, oh, I can't wait, I made this stock that I bought, oh, it's already up 10%. I'm gonna do great. This is gonna go to 1,000%. Oh, then I can retire. And well, let's look at what things can go wrong. That's not being negative. That's being realistic, pragmatic, and say, well, I gotta be prepared. And again, in any sports, soccer teams, they practice 6 days a week to play one weekend game. They go through a lot. So all of us would do that. So that, again, sometimes that arrogance can be poisonous. So it's healthy. Confidence is completely different than arrogance. So
Yes.
Confidence based on the experiences. So anyway, so I thought that's important. So.
Well, I've had a couple of things come up while you were talking.
Sure.
When you were talking about the inverting, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, we've been programmed, I think, and conditioned to go after our goals, achieve, accomplish, and a to-do list and what I need to do.
Exactly. Right.
So I like to approach it this way. Let's make a list of what you need to stop doing.
Yeah.
Okay, does that mean the same thing as the inversion? Stop. What do you need to stop doing? You need to stop not taking care of yourself. You need to stop, right? And then you have your goal list. It's not always about what you need to do. It's about what you need to stop doing. Also, too, NASA, when they were starting to, in the space era in the 60s and 70s, one of the programs was, let's not worry about how we're going to get to Mars. Let's worry about how we're going to get those guys back here safely and do that first. And when we figure that out, then we'll figure out how to get to Mars, which I thought was pretty profound. Last week, as you know, I visited with a colleague of ours, and I was at the River Cree Casino and Hotel. And that casino is like amazing. And by the way, that casino belongs to the Enoch Cree Nation, and they are taking now $20 million and putting up a huge, big medical center right next door to the casino because that's their land, right? So there's good that comes out of the casino as well as the bad. But one of our friends, he put in a $20 bill and won 4,000 right there, one smack. So that was very tempting for me to run in there with my $20 bill and probably have to come out and get another $20 bill and another. And when you mentioned about looking at the worst case scenario, and it's not about being negative, I can relate to that because when we first started our business, as you know, Ron was my business partner, and he was that kind of person. He could look at what could go wrong. And I present an idea and he would say, well, and I'd say, stop being so negative.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand it was his analytical mind that I didn't have, that he could foresee. Because he told me one time, if anybody is a problem on the front end, Laurie, there'll be a really bad problem on the back end. Right? So just a couple of things that came up for me as you were speaking. So shall we take a little break and then come back?
Absolutely. It's excellent points. Yes. Okay. Let's do that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching the Today Show here on the Disability Channel. And of course, welcome back to Dr. Ramin Modiri for season 2 of Money Matters. We're streaming live right now on my Facebook page, Laurie Davis, and also on 2 of our YouTube channels. And the shows will be transferred over as well to the TDC YouTube channel. We're being distributed by Your Home TV in the United States. And soon here, we are going to be submitting, Ramin and I, 22-minute segments for Kojiko, a distributor, television distributor in Ontario. So we're growing, Ramin. We've been away, but we're still growing. Is that a good sign?
Always. Awesome.
Right. All right. So over to you. What have you got for us next as we're discussing wisdom and investing and life's lessons, really, as you're sitting down
Right.
there in the middle of those big fires and staying safe? Over to you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to follow up again, our last segment with what you said. And one of the things I've noticed is if you look at some of the communities and we look at, for instance, the addiction epidemic, how we can use these inverting or reverse engineering and find out, is there any way we can help rather than, at the end, just having band-aids? What are the roots of the problems? And, there's addiction, there's poverty, there's suicide. And what happens as far as, let's say, I've just used addiction. We look at the worst case scenario. If we die. I mean, somebody dies. That's the end of that, which affects the whole family. So what happens is if somebody is not really spiritual, well, this is a physical world. After addiction, that's it. That's end of their life. So that decision that they made, to whatever reasons, so the roots of the cause are different. The environment, obviously, with the families and other things itself, but just that shaking up. And you just mentioned what to stop. We end up dying. So if we don't believe in the spiritual world, well, we know this is end of the path. Do I want to have that end of the path? Or if I'm spiritual, when you have the addictions, you're affecting all your loved ones and all the environment. So in the other world, that's going to come and hunt you. So either way, it's a lose-lose situation. So that's what I think. The same thing with when we are in the suicide, also in the poverty, we find out what are the worst cases, and we can get out of that. What actions we need to take, and what actions, like you said, if we stop these habits and exactly do the opposite, or what were happening. I know a lot of successful people who came from a poor background. They had really difficult childhoods, but they conquered those challenges, and they've become. So how we can do that? So that's I thought, just on a side note, would be helpful to understand. So let's go to another Charles Munger's words of wisdom, and he was really big on making these mental models at across like different disciplines. And what I mean by that, he wanted to know. Now here he was this master investor, so obviously he wanted to know about economics. One thing you will see in common with Warren Buffett and Munger, they are avid readers. They read all the time. Imagine being almost 100 years of age and still wanting to learn more. He would read. That is, and I know 20-year-olds that, I know 17-year-olds that they say, oh, I know everything because I have chat GPT, I can find answers. Well, this is not the same. So Charles was looking at, he said, well, you don't want to be just, learn just about economics. He would read about psychology, mathematics. He found mathematics very important. Now, the funny thing is, he was really good at mathematics and calculus. And I'll tell you a story about that. And in a sense that because I was, as you know, I wasn't an actuary, my major was in actuarial science. which is a lot to do with linear algebra, statistics, probabilities, and Charles Munger says, he was really good at calculus and he learned all of those. But when it comes to investing, you really don't need all these fancy math. You just need a common sense, simple rules of math to be successful in investing. So he can remember, and I can. 90% of the things I did, and I passed actuarial exams, and you have to take calculus and statistics and linear abstract algebra and all. I don't use those. I would love to sit down and solve a problem when I was in at university and 7-page solution. Oh, I thought that was so great. Do you think I remember anything? And none of them really help me right now. Of course, I learned as national engineer. So they don't. I want audience learn a common sense math. Know the basics. It's very important to be mathematically inclined when it comes to finances. But you don't have to be master of math. Learn all about other things, unless again you want to go engineering or go to the Mars. But mathematics are important. Also, Charles Munger said he studied history. That was so he looks at a very diverse group of knowledge of modeling because he thought for decision making and problem solving, you have to see things from multiple perspectives. So you see a lot of times you have very tunnel vision and we are very analytical and we just focus on one thing when it comes to trading and investing. We miss a lot of other opportunities, especially when it comes to decision making, because we are not sure if this is the right way or the decision is the right thing to do. So that's number two. Number three, he really believes in the power of incentives. And I know you believe in the shaping the behavior. We have to have incentives. Understanding what motivates people, what motivates investors positively, but also negatively. So we want to understand that. That's more of the psychology. So once we understand that, we can predict the outcomes and the decisions. And we apply that in investors' psychology when approach the markets. So it's important to understand what is their incentives, and again we can apply it in life, in individuals, and that's his third words of wisdom. His number four, he calls it first principles. He um, he, he believes in, rather than just relying on analogies of the past experiences alone, we have to break down the problem to their most fundamental truths, the truths about what is the reasoning up there. He's a very big in scientific method, so he looks at the logical side of things. And so we just don't, if we had, again, this is more of a psychological side. We talked about biases and other things that influence our decisions. It is important that, again, break things down from more of the logical sides, more of an unbiased side. So that's again not relying just on that personal experience that we've had, called like snake bite. We've talked about that in the past. So number five, he's a big believer. He calls it the circle of competence. And he thinks that, he advises, you got to stick to the areas where you're competent. You have a deep understanding. It's like you cannot be master of everything. So he cautions against, going to the areas that you have no knowledge. But it's funny how people, and I know people who have opinions about everything. One day they're a psychologist, next day you have a headache, they're your doctor. Next thing you know, you're talking about the sports, all of a sudden they're the coach. So they venture to everything, yet they're master of none. It's like So he truly believes in really understand, and all of us do have that. And I truly believe every one of us has a true gift and just finding it. So, for instance, I'm not, if it's something deep writing, for instance, or if I don't, I enjoy it, but it's not that I can be critical like my daughter. She's a great writer. I cannot, teach her what to do. I can give her opinion, but that's opinion. It's not fact. So, again, the circle of competence is very important. Before I go any further, do you have any input? Anything else that we've talked about?
Yeah, well, I agree with you totally. And I don't think, I know, um, when you only talk about that which you know, then you have credibility. When you're talking about things you don't know, that's arrogance. That's when people are speaking with me and they're name dropping. I know this guy. I've been to school with that person, famous people, whatever. So the credibility comes from what we know. And a professional also knows their limitations. I know what I'm not good at.
Mhm.
I know what I'm very good at, but I also know what I'm not good at. And I have no interest to be good at that. So, whatever that is, right? So, that was what was coming up for me as you were talking about that.
No,
And I
exactly.
agree, like being, if you really understand something really well, like you understand finance, and I always use this analogy, what I know about money and finance compared to what you know, we could put mine in a thimble, and yours in a high rise building to fill it all
Mhm.
up. Seriously, because that's where you've spent and invested your time. So to become proficient, we have to be willing to invest the time.
Exactly. Yes. And the biggest thing is knowing it, right? And that's why I
Right.
want to start with that Socrates quote because it really applies to everything we talk about. Again, the wisdom. Like he said, the stupid people, well, they already know everything. So that's why they don't listen to you anyway. They ask advice and end up giving you the advice. So funny,
Yeah.
huh? They
Yeah.
ask
They're
for
non
help.
coachable. I call
Yeah,
that being non coachable.
not coach. But yet they ask to be coached. That's so funny.
That's
They
right. I
come to
know.
you and then they end up wanting to teach you. And
Right.
but I thought that was important again when it comes to investing. And I think this applies to everyone, but I think a lot of times our audience, I'm like trying to work with our younger audience because there's a lot of emotions involved and I think just hoping that one or two of these suggestions will make a difference as far as how they look at life and
Yeah.
basically maybe do some
Mhm.
improvements. This is another one. We've talked about our biases, and Charles Munger, he's a big on avoiding confirmation bias. And what we mean by that is he believes that we have to be humble, but we don't really need to have this confirmation, looking for every evidence that it confirms what we are doing. And again, I'm positive that you've had so many experiences. People make these decisions. This could be in relationships, it could be at work, and they just come to you. They're not looking for an answer. They're looking for say, "Oh, yeah, you're right," or
Right.
they want to confirm that so they don't feel guilty or or they feel more confident. Charles Munger is big on actually the contradicting views. He was very good at that. So if I, as an investor, I don't go look around all the people, don't look at all the analysts. When I read something, I actually am more interested in the opinions or the ideas uh, that whether other analysts have, which is against my ideas, or it versus the things that maybe I'm not looking at it. So
Mhm.
these are simple things, but they again he's been over 60 years in the business or almost 70 years, and it has worked for him. And that's what I think it's important to again put the ego aside, and it's important again as long as that opinions are unbiased in a way that they're not just doing in spite of you, but they are really factual, and you look at those. And so he's big on that. So he's about the confirmation bias. Put the ego aside, please, but
Hmm.
just won't look around for what confirms what you're thinking, and
Hmm.
ignore other ideas. So, and it happens a lot in the parties, by the way. I've had people who come to me, when I used to go to a lot of these weekend parties in that community, and like, oh, Ramin, what do you think about gold? And I would say, and then they would, oh, that's great, yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then sometimes I would say, well, this is not what I think. And all of a sudden the conversation ends and they're talking to somebody else about
Ah,
gold.
yes.
And then all of a
Yes.
sudden they're having a drink and they're all buddy buddy. So, well, that's how
Hmm.
it works. So, you
Hmm.
don't go hunting for what you want to hear. So, um, another big thing for him and Warren Buffett was patience and
Oh, yeah.
discipline. These two are patience and discipline. He believes that it's in life and in investing is very important. He always thought, well, you got to wait for the right opportunities rather than acting impulsive, because when we act impulsively, and a lot of people, a lot of during COVID, for instance, we've talked about that. A lot of younger generation, they got all this money, they're at home, not going anywhere, and then they decided to become traders. And because there were so more of them, all of a sudden the things are looking really good. So they were not making those decisions based on fundamentals, based on looking at what's going on. It was an impulsive action by a community. We call it the Reddit, the Wall Street bets. They all open this Robinhood account, and all of them would jump as a community in like a stock, let's say GameStop, for instance, and they will push it up, and they thought they're all genius, and they all followed each other. So that was not a that's not a fundamental investing, and it's not the right way. And it's almost the same thing. It's like in baseball. Warren Buffett is a big baseball fan. You wait for the right pitch to hit. So
Hmm.
you have to watch for it. And you can just swing at everything, and then you'll strike out. So that's he's very big on that. And the next thing in our list, and this is the last one I would share with you, is Charles Munger. It really believes we have to learn from history. And that brings me to the idea I mentioned about our elders and the traditions. Not that we have to, things have changed. I know that we improve upon things, but the wisdom is there. So Munger believes in learning from the past to avoid making the same mistakes right now. So again, this is a common adage, right? We talk about those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And that's where the wisdom
Ah,
comes, right? So
right.
we keep repeating, and that's why we have to seek other people's experiences, people that, like you mentioned, with credibility. I go back to experiences from not narrow-minded traditional leadership, but more of elders who have gone through so many things. I tell my son, I mean, it's like, he asks me a question, and let's say I've gone to this path, this road, I don't know the name of the street, whatever it is, 100 times. I'm generally, because I've done it 100 times, I know like at 8 o'clock how the traffic is, at 8:30 what happens. If it's the first time he's going, I've done this 100 times, so I have a better picture of at least the timing of it, or how long does it take from go to A to B. And that's why it's important to do. And I'm a big advocate of history. Not that we have to be stuck with it, but we learn because the human nature doesn't really change that much. We are the same thing. The hope and fear and greed, they are all there. And whether it was 5,000 years ago with the civilizations, with the empires come and gone, for the same reason as they are at this moment, with all the technologies we have, you look around and look at the leaders of the countries around the globe, you could just change their clothes and think you're in Rome or Greek or Persian empires. They behaving exactly the same, except they have, nuclear powers. That's the only difference. They have the same soldiers, they have the same egos, the same hunger for power. So that's what I think history is important. So
Mhm.
those are my a little tidbits from, again, Charles Munger, a little bit of my own experience about how we have to really not only be technologically advanced and learn about the things, but also have the wisdom of when to use these knowledge and when not to, and who to go to and who not to go to. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wrote down patience and discipline.
Hmm.
And sometimes we have an experience that when things are not going the way that we think they should go, we're being told you have to wait. And I've actually taught this to my dog. So I figure if I could teach that to my dog, then what's our problem? Because I'll say, if I say, well, we're going in the car, he loves to ride in the car. And then I'll say, but you just have to wait. And then he'll sit and wait. So patience is really important. I've always been very patient, and I'll keep pounding on doors and keep working with people, even when they're kicking and spitting and resisting and don't want to make any changes. What I've learned is if you don't make the changes willingly, you will be forced to make the changes.
Hmm.
And we all know about that. Whether it was a marriage or a location or a career, or for me, it's been working in various networks. When it's time to make that change, I'll make that change. And then that's how I got here because I was willing to say goodbye to over there. So, and close that door because when you close one door, you have to close that door first before other doors will open for you. So that's kind of what came up for me. And discipline, yes, discipline. But discipline, people get really, they'll say things like, you still get up in the morning and go to work at your age, right? Yes, I do. Every morning. I'm down in the office 8:30 every morning. So, that discipline has supported me in being able to have a complete life of self-direction and freedom. And, that's just the way it goes. That's a phone call from a bank,
Oh,
Peace Hills Trust. I shall have to call them back. Yes, just as we're talking, Look at that. Isn't that coincidence? There's a door. There's a big door just opened. I made a call to them about a week ago. I'm just now hearing back. That's a door we want to open, and it just opened, just like that. Boom! Just as we're talking, Ramin. What does that sound like? That sounds like karma to me, or what do you call it? The universe reaching out. Here you go, kids. Here's your call. Right in the middle of our conversation. Ah, ah.
I'm
Oh,
patient. See,
that's
that's
called patience.
yeah.
I just checked off. I called them and left a message. And yeah. And that's another thing. But of course, that's about people wanting to be feeling they have that need to feel in control. So that must come up a lot in the investment world when we're not in control of a lot of things. You want to comment on that?
Absolutely. That's an excellent point. Um, and the question is, we see ourselves bigger than the markets. We see ourselves that we are the ones who, because we made that decision, we are correct and it's going to
Oh.
happen. And it's not. That goes back to that ego, because markets are bigger than us. They make the decision. The question is knowing, like you said, we have to know what we know and what we don't know. And we have to know how to react to that situation. And that's preparation, right? We talked about preparation. So, things happen beyond our control. And and again, one of the biggest problems I've worked with many traders, and the biggest thing is they sit down and they think that because they've done all these analysis, let's say this is the way it's going to go. Well, it's not going to go that way. There's if you have time, just I share a little tiny story about Mike Douglas was his late Mike Douglas was a great trader in a psychology side of things. He helped a lot of traders to improve from the psychological point. He has this story about this very successful trader who was a technician. So he knew exactly when to get in, when to get out. And there was this big cotton trader in Texas that he heard about him. And he asked him if he would work for him, this technician who was engineering background. And he asks him to come and tell him what he should do with his trades, with the cotton. And the technician comes to him and says, you know what? Cotton is going to go up. I can guarantee you that. I can see it. My charts are telling me. And he goes, are you sure? He goes, of course I'm sure. Look at all these technicals. They're telling me what to do. He picks up the phone, this major trader. He picks up the phone and he calls his broker. He says, sell 10,000 contracts right now on cotton. As soon as he does that, the price of cotton just collapses. So the moral of the story is, yes, the technician maybe had all the tools and he was guaranteeing it's going to go up. One trader who's very influential picks up the phone and collapsed the market. So as much as he knew, and he just told him, he said, listen, you might know what you know, but I know the markets, and what happened, just one seller like me can collapse. So we cannot be arrogant thinking that we know. We always have to be prepared. And that's what we talk about, controlling your risk, your losses, because there's always somebody out there who's looking for their own benefit and knows something that they can just completely go opposite what you're doing. So that's the moral of the story, that we don't. Yeah. So it is, going back to your initial, that's what, that again goes back to that arrogance and thinking that, hey, we are in control. Well, we are not in control.
No.
We never are in control. We think we are, but we want to have the tools to help us to make the best of that situation, but also prepare if things go the other way. And that goes back to rule number 1 that we talked about. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so very much for that information. I'm really glad that we're back for season 2. And we have a huge following right now, and we're putting ourselves out there in bigger and better ways every day. So today, Dr. Ramin Modiri, Money Matters, streaming live right now on the Laurie Davis Facebook page, also our YouTube channels, and anywhere else that anybody wants to listen. All we ask from our viewers is to share the show. Put it on your Facebook page, put it on your YouTube channel. And the more people that have more eyeballs we have on us, the more people we can help with information that we know people need. So thank you, Ramin, for an amazing show today. And stay safe out of those fires.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll talk soon. So bye for now, everyone. Back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, Wednesday, Wellness on Wednesday. Wellness Day.
Okay.